This is a Vortex Viper PST Generation 1 2.5 to 10 by 32 scope, and this is a Vortex Viper PST Generation 2 2 to 10 by 32 scope. These two scopes look very similar on paper with the exception of weight. The Generation 1 scope weighs in at a bit over 18.5 ounces. The Generation 2 scope weighs in over 26 ounces. So you might wonder if the Generation 2 scope is actually any better, and is it worth the additional half pound over the Generation 1? These scopes have very similar features. They both have a 2-ish to 10x magnification range. They're both illuminated first focal plane reticles. They both have exposed target turrets. The situation is kind of unique to just these two scopes because the other optics in the PST range saw significant changes between the first and second generations, for example, the LPVOs. The Generation 1 PST LPVO is a 1:4. It has unlocked target turrets, it has very dim reticle illumination, and it's extremely lightweight. The PST Gen 2 LPVO is the venerable Viper 1:6. It has much brighter fiber optic or LED illumination. It has a much simpler reticle design. It has capped turrets, and it weighs a lot. All of the PST Gen 2s picked up a ton of weight over the first generation. If we go back to the 2 to 10s, you can see how much beefier the Gen 2 is over the Gen 1, even though these are both built off of 30mm main tubes. The Generation 2 has much beefier turrets, it has a side-mounted battery and illumination dial, and it has a much bigger eyepiece. The most obvious difference between these two generations of scope on paper is the magnification range. The Generation 1 had a 4x zoom ratio, so 2.5 on the low end up to 10 on the high end. The Gen 2 has a 5 times zoom ratio, 2 on the low end to 10 on the high end. There are also higher magnification models in the Gen 2 range, such as the 3 to 15, that have the same features and the same 5x zoom ratio. Both generations of scope have first focal plane reticles, although the designs of them are a little bit different. I suspect most people probably prefer the updated reticles, although I find myself being pretty partial to the one on the Gen 1. It's a lot cleaner to me, and it seems more conducive to dialing, which is the way these scopes I think are meant to be used anyway. So even though these scopes have the same capabilities and the Generation 1 is significantly lighter, the Gen 2 is overall a much nicer scope, and it's just a combination of all the little things. The turrets on the Gen 2 are much better. They're beefier, but that gives them twice as much elevation change per rotation as the ones on the Gen 1. You can dial 12 MOA per rotation on the first gen, 24 MOA per rotation on the second gen. Both turrets are very audible and tactile, excellent clicks, but the Generation 2 is easier and faster to adjust. Both of these scopes have illuminated reticles. They're similarly bright, not super daylight bright, but that's not really what the illumination on these is for. The side-mounted battery and illumination wheel on the Generation 2 is a little more out of the way, and it also has a much stiffer adjustment, so you're less likely to accidentally turn it on. However, they both have an off position in between all of the on positions, which is a nice feature. Both of these scopes have excellent side parallax adjust, not much to say there. Another big change between the Generation 1 and the Generation 2 is the design of the Zero Stop system. The Generation 1 has the Vortex CRS Zero Stop system, where you basically fill up the space inside the turret with shims to prevent it from being rotated too far past your point of zero. Exactly how far it goes past zero will kind of depend on where the scope ends up and how many shims you're able to fit in there. It's pretty easy to set up the CRS Zero Stop, but it really isn't the best. It's not the most definitive feeling, and it also doesn't stop exactly at zero. You dial many clicks beyond before it actually comes to a stop. The Generation 2 scope has the improved RZR Zero Stop. It's a real pain in the ass to set up because you have to take a bunch of tiny hex screws out of the thing, and you have to adjust your final zero without the benefit of clicks, which is kind of annoying. However, once you get it set up, you have a perfect Zero Stop that stops exactly at zero, feels incredibly solid, and doesn't require you to hold on to a little pack of brass shims for the entire time you own the scope. The other things are basically just quality of life. Having a 2x on the low end is nicer than a 2.5x. The Generation 2 scope also has more field of view, not surprising at the 2x because of course it's less magnification on the low end than the Generation 1. However, it also has more field of view on the top end as well. That's a difference in the optical design. The Generation 1 PST is rated at 4 inches of eye relief. The Generation 2 is rated at 3 point something. Both of them have plenty of usable eye relief. A combination of the bigger eyepiece on the Generation 2 and slightly less eye relief gets your eye closer to a bigger objective, gives you more field of view, and just provides a much more comfortable viewing experience. It's not something you can really put down on paper, and it's not something you can really demonstrate, but you can just feel it when you get your eye behind the Gen 2. You can see more, and it feels way better. The controls on the Gen 2 are also a lot better. The zoom ring is stiff, which is a problem if you don't have a throw lever, but you should definitely have a throw lever. I've got the switch view levers on both of these. I think they are a critical upgrade for all of the PST scopes. And the diopter adjustment on the back of the Gen 2 is much stiffer, so it's less likely to get knocked out of position accidentally. So overall, the PST Gen 2 is absolutely a better scope than the Gen 1. However, I don't think that weight is worth it on the 2 to 10 models specifically. For just an extra 2 ounces on the Generation 2, we could step up to the 3 to 15. That one does a better job of justifying its weight than the 2 to 10. This really isn't a lot of magnification for the weight, and that means it feels kind of strange to put this on almost any rifle. I wouldn't put this on a rifle I expected to run around with because it's just too much weight, especially at the top of the gun where it makes the gun very unbalanced and top-heavy. And I wouldn't put it on a rifle I didn't expect to run around with because it's just not enough magnification for a stationary gun. So the PST Gen 2 series is definitely an upgrade. They are phenomenal scopes for the money, but then again, so are the Gen 1s, and I think the lightweight nature of the Gen 1 is more my speed. It's just the kind of scope I like. I really do like this PST Gen 2 2 to 10, but I think the Gen 1 2.5 to 10 is the scope that I'll actually keep long term. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I know I don't have the technology to provide cool scope cam reviews like C does, so you should go subscribe to his channel, and he'll actually show you what scopes look like. I can just tell you what they feel like. See you later.